Welcome to the Bookman's Corner. I'm your host, Lois Lindstrom. Today we have an author who is a two-time National Press Club Award winner and currently serves as a Senior National Security Fellow for the Center for Immigration Studies, a Washington, D.C. policy institute on immigration and national security. We're happy to welcome our guest, Todd Bensman. And we're so happy you're here, Todd.
Thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate it.
Wonderful. Todd Bensman is the author of the book, Overrun, How the Biden Administration Unleashed the Greatest Border Crisis in U.S. History. Based primarily in Texas, Todd frequently reports from the southern border of the United States and Mexico and Latin America. He's testified before Congress as an expert witness and appears on radio and television outlets to discuss illegal immigration and border security. He has written for Newsweek magazine and the New York Post, among many other publications. Well, Todd, I loved your book, and I think it's filled with so much new information in my mind. Now, given that Title 42 is lifted and other variables remain unchanged, a reasonable projection is that 7 million total immigrants will be admitted during Biden's term in office. This is a group of mostly unskilled, uneducated, uninsured people speaking a Babylon of languages and in need of public welfare assistance and medical care for which many will never pay. I mean, how is that going to change America?
Right. Well, first of all, this is the greatest border crisis, the greatest mass migration crisis in American history.
Yes.
It has broken every record in the government books. We have never seen so many millions of people come in over the southern border. As of today, as we're recording, about 5 million plus people have actually entered the country and are living in American cities from coast to coast. That is just by its nature, just the 5 million will have a transformative impact on the country in lots of different areas of quality of life. But also we're not finished because the policies that are in place that are enticing people to come through and actually enabling them to enter and stay are in place and maybe even on a wider aperture than they were the first 2 years. We should have another 3 to 4, maybe 5 million more come in by the end of the first term. And because of that, you're going to have impacts on, for example, all of our school systems.
Yes, well, I want to get to that.
Yeah.
You know, what was the country's second greatest border crisis, and what year or period of years did that take place? And how does it compare to this crisis?
The most that we ever had recorded was 1.6 million apprehensions in 2000. In 2021, and we never came close to that since then, until 2021. By the end of the first year of Biden administration, it was 1.7 million apprehensions. That broke the record. 2022, then we had 2.5 million apprehensions. 2023, we're already on track to hit close to 3 million apprehensions. It's just a stair-stepping, escalating crisis. And none of those include the gotaways, which is another category. Also, we're in record territory. Those are people that got through and did not get caught.
The gotaways are,
Yes.
I've read like 200,000 at least, right?
1.7 million.
1.7 million gotaways.
In the last...
and we don't even know where they are, right?
Right.
They're somewhere, they got away.
They got away. And those are underestimated. Gotaways are very underestimated, so it's probably far greater than that.
Well, you write in your book jacket that millions of foreign nationals have overrun the southern border starting on Inauguration Day 2021, and millions more will cross over by the end of President Biden's term. And people from third world countries from around the world can just cross the Rio Grande because they're economic migrants. I mean, when does this end? And are we going to become like ancient Rome, which became overrun with migrants?
Well, we did something really unusual in American history for an American president, which was to decouple from our immigration laws, which require stopping, blocking, obstructing entry, deporting, detaining. Instead, we just simply have allowed people in on ad hoc systems.
As long as they can cross the Rio Grande.
If they cross the Rio Grande,
They're
especially
here.
with a kid, they're being granted entry into the U.S. on kind of like, these papers, notices to appear, notices to report, on an honor system later. And of course, that's enticing
Lots
so
of
many
people.
people, but not just Mexicans and Central Americans, but 40% of everybody who's been reaching the border are from 160 other countries.
I know.
Last week,
I found that so incredible when I read that about in your book.
it's the whole world.
The whole world, because I mean there are billions of poor people in the world, and they're all coming here, right?
The door's open.
The door's open. And well, how does your book lay out the facts on the immigration human tsunami into Texas and in the southern border states, where when your primary sources are not experts, politicians, and media pundits? Where did you get the information for this?
That's right. This is a field reporting based book. The primary sources are immigrants that are on their way. I've interviewed thousands of immigrants over the last 2.5 years. I just came back from Mexico. I met my first Dagestanis, my first Kyrgyzstanis. I always meet all like Belarusans. The whole world is coming here. And when I talk to them, I really drill down about their motivations and their methods and how they got the money. And
How did they get the money?
well, first, it's a lot of different ways, but I would say the most common way they get their money is that they have relatives in the U.S. that are telling them, hey, you can get in right now. I'll send you $10,000 for your smuggling,
Okay.
and you'll pay me back when you get here and start working. Sometimes the home villages all pool together for a family to send some people over, and they get paid back over time, and then with remittances. Everybody eventually gets paid back. Sometimes they borrow it from criminal organizations, and then things get...
Now, do these people speak English, or do they speak Spanish, or how do you communicate?
Well, when I go down there, I don't speak Spanish well enough to do interviews that I trust. So I hire translators that go with me.
Wow.
And then when I meet exotics like the Dagestanis or
Never even heard of them.
right,
That's right.
Kyrgyzstanis, there are apps, interpretation apps that actually work pretty well.
Incredible. That's
so, yeah.
incredible. Well, my eyes widened when I read in your book that the Mexican cartels' economic proceeds from human smuggling are said to have surpassed those from drug smuggling. That was shocking. Please give us some congressional testimony and numbers on this from your book.
Okay, so, the cartels, they make their money on drug trafficking,
Yeah.
coke and heroin and marijuana especially. But this thing was so vast, the number of people coming to get in to take advantage of this incredible opportunity. The border's never been this open. I mean, everybody who comes is just like ushered right in. So they've taken advantage, and they have monetized the masses. A lot of times they'll charge $2,500 for Central Americans, anywhere up to $9,000 for Middle Easterners. And they inventory control. So you have to buy like a water park bracelet around in order to
they're
get
wearing
on.
this bracelet then.
Right. They might have been making $500 million a year before 2021, and now they're in the $13 billion, $15 billion a year.
Incredible. And these are Mexican cartels, right?
Yeah. And what do you think they use that money for? They're buying weapons, and they're increasing their power over the Mexican government.
Absolutely. I read in your book that foreign aliens arriving in Texas with hardcore criminal convictions for terrible crimes got the hall pass right along with the non-criminal ones. Biden sandbagged a traditional annual ICE deportation report that would have shown how many criminal aliens had it deported. Well, tell us more about that.
One of the most enticing policies that this administration put in place on day one was that they eliminated deportation.
For any reason, right?
Almost for anything. So the
murderers and the rapists and the
because
gangsters are here, right?
Previously, you had ICE officers in the interior of the country that would find these guys, hunt these guys down, and then get them out of the country.
Right.
And they were shackled. All of them were shackled, 6,000 ICE officers to their desks. And so the numbers of deportations of really hardcore criminal aliens fell to the lowest number that we have ever seen.
I don't think the American public knows this.
No, they don't.
I don't think. I think this is shock. This shocked me. It was shocking. And then, Todd, on page 14 of your book, you're interviewing a cartel human smuggler near a bridge. Now, what did he tell you about this invasion?
Well, this is early on in the crisis in like March, April of 2021, just a few months in, and already just thousands of runners were hiring smugglers to get away through the desert. And these guys, he was a guide, and he was just absolutely wealthy. They had never seen such money. They were just charging $12,000 a head to guide them in. And I said, to what do you owe this incredible
Bonus?
fortune? Yeah, this prosperity. And he said, he looked at me and he said like this, La invitación, the invitation. I said, what do you mean by that? He says, Biden shut down enforcement into deportations. And so all we have to do is get them past Border Patrol and they're in. And they all knew it, so they're
pouring in from
to
around the
hire
world.
us.
All the billions of poor people around the world. Yeah,
everyone.
Well, now, do you think that? I mean, everyone around the world knows this because it's being reported by the national press, isn't it?
But they get their information mainly from one another.
Okay.
There's a lot of false narratives about this. The cartels are giving disinformation. That's not where they get their information. They all have cell phones, and they're getting selfies from up trail to down trail. We're in, yay, they've got their thumbs up, and they're in New York, they're in the hotels, they're being taken care of. That's where they get their information. Here's the place on the border to come in. Here's what you can expect. Here's what you need to say. Here's what you don't need to say.
Yes, it's all scripted. Yeah, they know exactly what to say.
Yeah, that's where they get their information.
Yeah.
It's live-time intelligence.
Live-time intelligence, exactly. I found it interesting to read about the migrant child surge during the Obama administration in 2014. 70,000 unaccompanied minors or children from Central American countries flooded over the Texas border in just a few months, a 77% increase over the prior year. Why did that happen, and how did President Obama deal with that?
Right. So the populations of aspiring migrants around the world discovered that there was this new program that we couldn't detain minors for longer than 3 days under this new policy.
So you just had to have a minor with you to get in, right?
Well, just the minors would come in alone, and we couldn't detain them, and then we would have to take care of them, and then at our expense reunite them with relatives or somebody in the interior. So they just flooded in for this thing. And Obama was only able to put a stop to it when he started deporting them back to the tarmacs. The 70,000 number that you cite there at the time was considered this incredibly grave crisis.
Yes.
But unaccompanied minors have been exempted from all of our deportation policies on Inauguration Day 2021, and we've had 350,000 unaccompanied minors
350,000
take advantage of this.
What would the ages be?
Anybody under 18 is considered.
Anybody? I mean, so a 10-year-old.
You don't have to prove it. You don't have to prove it either. Most of them are teenagers.
Okay.
They're like 15, 16, 17, but a lot of them lie about their age because they can just get in and they don't have to prove it.
Sure.
We won't turn you back.
Sure.
And that's still in place right now. We have so many unaccompanied minors are enticed to make this dangerous journey and to cross our border because we're letting them in.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Of course.
Well, many Americans believe America can and should take in small numbers of genuine refugees from around the world, but some pundits believe we simply cannot keep on taking on millions of ordinary economic migrants year after year and handle the cost and assimilation of all of these people. I mean, when will it stop, and will Congress do something about this, do you think?
Well, first of all, no country in the world does this. Nor has any country through to ancient times.
But you've heard the migrants problem in Europe that they've been streaming in, from Syria and other places. You've heard about that,
of course.
But this is different.
Well, yes, because first of all, the scale of what's happening on our southern border dwarfs anything that happened in Europe, even during the wars.
Really? By how much?
Millions. I mean, there were maybe 3 million people came in during the 2014 to 16 European crisis before they kind of put a stop to it.
They did put a stop to it,
They
though.
did by deporting people.
Okay.
They still have a problem, but it's not like it was.
But that wasn't really reported that well, that they stopped it, I don't think. I mean,
No, well, I mean, they did stop it. They started doing controversial kind of deportations, and there's controversy over those
Okay.
those measures because they're, I mean, it's hard to look a migrant in the face who wants to come in and just say no.
Yes.
You're going home.
Yes.
But you're right. The vast majority of those who are coming into our southern border are economic migrants. They are not legitimate asylum seekers. I have a huge chapter in this book called Insane Asylum is the title of that. And it describes in great detail how, for example, Haitians, nobody wants to live in Haiti, we get that.
Yes.
But the vast majority of Haitians that have been crossing our border by the tens of thousands
Yes.
have been living in third safe countries for years before they came here.
I don't think people know that.
No.
They've been living in places like Chile and Colombia and other South American countries.
prosperously, safely. Then they saw the door was open and like, let's go.
Okay.
Everybody's getting in. And the Venezuelans that are pouring in right now, they haven't lived in Venezuela in 6, 7, 8, 9 years.
Where have they been?
They've been living in Ecuador and Argentina and Brazil and Chile and
Okay.
15 other countries safely, very prosperously. The Venezuelans have done very well, and they certainly are not being persecuted politically in any of those places.
So why are they coming here?
Well, they tell me why they're coming here.
Why?
Because they can get in.
And they think they'll get
It's an upgrade.
And they think they'll get a bigger house and a bigger car if they come here.
It's an upgrade. And
It's an
plus,
upgrade.
the United States is storied as a lifestyle, as a place where the streets are paved with gold, and it's still around the world has this wonderful reputation of a lifestyle upgrade.
Yes.
And you can be living really well in Argentina, making lots of money, but if you can get into the U.S., you're probably going to do
Even better. Yeah, that's right.
and
Even
so
better.
are your kids.
Well,
But they're all claiming humanitarian protection or asylum for which they are not authentic.
Yeah, not at all. Well, now let's talk about the Flores loophole in 1997, which then became a game-changing amendment under Judge Gee in 2015 that contributed to the current immigration crisis at the United States southern border. Can you explain this Flores loophole?
The reason we have had so many families come is because there was this legal settlement back then that was amended in 2015 that made it so that the U.S. government cannot detain families with children
At
for
all.
longer than a couple of weeks.
That's it. Just a couple of weeks.
Right. And so as soon as those facilities fill up, it's like a bathtub. Everybody who comes in after the bathtub is filled just gets straight in.
Wow.
And so that enticed families to come. Starting in 2018, when Trump was in office, we had about 1 million people in family units come through. He shut it down by making them wait in Mexico for their quote-unquote asylum claims. Now that's back on. The post-Title 42 policy environment, families now can take advantage of the Flores loophole again, and everybody knows it. The whole world knows the Americans can't hold us. They're going to have to let us go.
How can that be changed? It's that Congress has to do something, right?
Well, yes. The Flores settlement requires that the administration come up with a replacement regulation. That's all they got to do. The Trump administration came up with one.
Yes.
And at the very end, it was litigated, and they delayed it until the Biden administration came in, and the Biden administration killed the appeal. They were this close, and they killed the appeal. So families will be rushing in. When you see that, it's because of the Flores settlement. Look it up. You can Google.
Yes, you can. Did the Trump administration seek innovative new ideas to tamp down the increasing number of migrants pouring into Texas and other southern states?
The problem is we have a divided Congress that can't fix the Flores settlement or the asylum law, which needs tweaks.
Okay.
And as a result, they had to come up with ways to increase the odds that you will not get in.
Okay.
And one of those, a primary one, was that if you cross 5 other countries that were safe to get here, that means obviously you are not a real asylum seeker, if you're drowning, you don't pick the best life raft.
That's
you
right.
just grab
Exactly.
whatever life raft you can.
Exactly.
And so he put that policy in place. You're ineligible if you cross through one of those countries. And you have to wait for your asylum claim in Mexico. Well, nobody wants to do that. The whole point of claiming asylum is it gets you in,
That's right.
and you
As
can
fast as
disappear.
possible. Exactly.
Right. So those were pretty innovative, and they were incredibly effective.
They were.
First things that went.
First things
day.
that went, that's right.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that when the world became knowledgeable about how easy it was to enter the United States, the number of migrants grew exponentially. I mean, from 16,000 in 2016 to about the same in 2017 to 473,682 in 2019. I mean, since 2019, it's been an incredible number of people.
Well, like I said, I mean, for 10 years, I mean, the lowest number that we've ever had was Trump's final year in office. Those numbers were like scraping the bottom. I mean, as far as like how many were coming through. And that was partly because of the pandemic and these policies that he had put in place. So when Biden came into office, he immediately dispatched with all of those, eliminated interior enforcement, told the whole world, we're going to let you in despite Title 42. If you're families, if you're unaccompanied minors, if you're pregnant up to 7 weeks, if you're from this country, that country, or the other country, we're going to let you in. And we're just going to give you on the honor system to check in voluntarily when you get to your city of choice.
Wow.
And then they just disappear,
They
of course.
disappear, yeah.
And that is an incredible enticement. When you talk to the immigrants, as I have, and you just ask a few questions below the surface, they'll tell you they're letting us in. So we are willing to pay $10,000 because we're almost guaranteed to get in. Women that are 7 months pregnant were like guaranteed to get in.
Well, let's talk about the Europeans that maybe a European marries an American, and once they get the paperwork and get the passport, they have to pay thousands of dollars to become an American citizen and get that passport. I mean, it's very expensive.
Right. I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to who have done it the legal way. Mexican Americans and their descendants are infuriated by this because they jumped through the hoops, they paid the money, they waited their turn, and then here are just like 5 million people that just got in.
Crossed the Rio Grande. Yeah, that's
cut
right.
The line.
Well, tell us about that interview with Veronica, who left Honduras with her 2 children because she had heard on the news that mothers and fathers who had children could cross into the United States. Now, Veronica gave several $1,000s to human smugglers to take she and her children over the Rio Grande. I mean, what happened to Veronica, who happens to be a single mom? What happened to her?
Well, first of all, I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of immigrants, individuals like this, who, they see the doors open. They would have stayed home, but when the doors open, they take these very dangerous journeys, and they're willing to risk it, just like the wagon train people from the settlers.
Sure.
I mean, it was dangerous to cross the prairies back then.
Yes.
And a lot of these people get injured and harmed. There's rapes that happen. A lot of people die. Children are found in the river, dead. And this is probably one of the greatest tragedies about this.
And it's underreported, I think.
It's underreported, and it's certainly never ascribed to policies in Washington, D.C.
No.
But they are.
Yeah.
They die because they're on their way here to take advantage of a policy
That's
change.
right. And then I found it interesting to read in your book that the last 2 Democratic presidents before Biden, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, were both lawyers, would never have countenanced dismantling the basics of immigration enforcement. Clinton was downright proud of his border crackdowns and attitudes. I mean, how did that change in 2019?
It's true. What we're seeing at the border under a Democratic administration,
under Biden,
is something that no prior Democratic Party would ever have countenanced. They were pretty tough. They weren't that far from Republicans on border security.
I don't think people know that. I don't think people realize.
They were tough.
Yeah.
And Clinton was tough. Obama was called the deporter-in-chief. But what happened was Donald Trump. And Donald Trump created so much animosity
Yes.
on the American left that they, especially his immigration policy, he was like, let's build the big, beautiful wall. So in a way, this is a reaction to him and his policies to the other side of the continuum.
Now, let me ask you, what about the Trump wall? Some of it was funded and was built, but now where does that stand, and how much would it cost to finish up the wall?
Well, the wall altogether was, I think, about 450 miles by the time he finished. But when Biden came in, the first thing he did, and as a campaign promise, was he shut it down. And when he did, there were these gaps all along the wall for hundreds of miles. And those gaps are the spots where all the migrants are now pouring through right there, turning themselves in. The wall is being repaired in some areas. The administration saw that it had to, fill in some of those gaps. But it would, the material is all out there rotting. I was just there a few weeks ago, and just acres and acres and acres of slowly rusting material that could be probably restored and put up in relatively short order for far less than a bunch of Javelin missiles that we're sending to Ukraine.
But a lot of pundits and journalists say, well, the wall will not work. Maybe you've spent all this money on a wall, but they can still get around it. What do you think about people? What's your response to that?
Two things is, for one thing, the smugglers and the immigrants don't like walls because they stop them. They're in the way. They move around the walls and go through the gaps. Furthermore, if you talk to Border Patrol, who spend 40 hours a week along those walls, they say that they are incredibly effective when they're patrolled and they've got some tech on them. If the walls really don't work, like they say, why don't you just shut up and go about your merry way instead of complaining and squealing about how they don't work. Just smirk quietly and go about your way if they don't work.
Exactly.
But the amount of objection and squealing about the wall is, to me, it's inversely proportionate to really how well they know they work.
Yes. And then, in your view, has Biden's Homeland Security Secretary, Alexandro Mayorkas, acted in direct violation of his duty to direct U.S. Customs and Border Protection to enforce the border against illegal entry? Is it a grounds for impeachment in your view?
I'm not a fan of impeachment. I think it would be a political theater that's unnecessary. However, the Mayorkas DHS, their official policy is to accommodate flow, to bring it in, to grease the skids. They say so. Safe, orderly, and humane is what they constantly say, not what the law says that they have to do, which is to stop, block, detain, deport, and deter. You never, ever hear that from this administration, and it's the first administration ever in modern times to take that position. It's very, very remarkable. And certainly Obama never took that position. He said, I have to enforce the law.
Yes.
The law is the law.
The law is the law. Well, where can our viewers find your book to purchase it?
Sure. The book is published by Post Hill Press, Bombardier Books. It's distributed in bookstores. You can find it there, but you can also find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold, pretty much.
Well, thanks again so much for being a guest on the Bookman's Corner. It was great having you.
Thank you so much for your attention.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching. Please join us again next month for a new edition of the Bookman's Corner. I'm Lois Lindstrom.